aspects to it. I don't know if you've noticed, they're not that can suck. And so one of the great things about games is getting your head out of all that and into something that's cool. And so the advent of more realistic games or more realistic damage models to me is neat. I mean, I think it's kind of a blowback against kind of what you're saying. Like, it feels so unrealistic, or it feels so gamey to shoot someone in the head 20 times and they're still standing there. That it's cool. It's a neat sort of subgenre. And again, it's mostly an indie thing. Not a lot of the big boys have really made leaps like that. But it's what makes Dark Souls so compelling, is the element of risk. Not that that's uber realistic either. But like Counter-Strike, when that came out, part of what's so revolutionary about that is, like, you could get one shot killed in a PvP game, which is shocking. The downside of that kind of thing is that it becomes very newbie unfriendly. If you played Counter-Strike at all, I guarantee I know what your newbie experience is. It's like you're running the game like, this is awesome, and then, like, bam, you're dead. And it happens so fast, you didn't have time to learn, like, how do I not get dead that fast next time? What are you going to say?
That was my experience with it too. When I got Counter-Strike,
yes,
like, this is amazing, and wow,
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Like, that's why we made the Legion system. Was a system we had in Asheron's Call back in the day, like early MMO, and that was a system where new players were like a cherished resource. Like, as a higher level player, one of the best ways to level was recruit new players into your allegiance, and then if they leveled up well, you'd level up with them. You'd get a portion of their XP shared to you. And the reason why is because the Ultima Online experience back then was like, you'd log in the world and like, the world of Ultima, this is awesome. I have like a short sword, and I got my like 7 gold pieces, and this is so cool. And you take one step out of town, and someone leaps out of a bush, and they gank you, and they dance around your corpse and take your short sword, and they take your 7 gold pieces, and you're like, okay, screw this, I quit. The downside of like being insta-gankable is that, again, like a learning curve, like how do you learn not to die? It's like, oh yeah, you learn eventually, like in DE Dust 2, the like 19 places, don't step there, somebody's going to hop you in the head, but like you need to have some persistence to get there. It amazes me that, in games that are that hardcore still gain new fans in modern day and age, or League, or those kinds of games that really can get quite intense quite early. It says something for persistence of gamers, actually, that those games do thrive and grow over time, because it really can be pretty punitive.
A question from Disabled Talent. He asks, who do you think makes more money? Companies who charge for games, or companies who make free-to-play
games? Oh, good question. So if you're on mobile, no question it's free to play. You look at top grossing, it's pretty easy to pull that data out. No question that's dominated by quote unquote free to play games. Because if you roll the numbers for that, usually most companies, when they talk about that publicly, have something like 3% of their users pay any significant amount of money, but they're paying so much money that it floats the other 97%, or maybe 10% pay, and they pay a few dollars, but then the 2 or 3% will pay hundreds of dollars, and that's enough to float large amounts of truly free players. That industry is very much biased towards that. If you look at the EDAR data, there's a ton of stuff on that to be able to dig up. On the PC, it's interesting because most PC sales now happen through Steam. Like, they are a bit of a monopoly right now in many ways. Many games aren't releasing in retail versions at all anymore. Steam's numbers are very available. They have an API you can pull out of, or look at Steam Spy or other stuff. And in their case, from the numbers that you can see, it looks like that's actually still dominated by buy-to-play games as opposed to free-to-play games. MMOs is absolutely dominated, I would say, at this point. The sole exception is World of Warcraft, but that is also the exception that kind of dominates that industry right now. Esports games is all free-to-play, obviously. The numbers on League, I don't know. I don't have access to them, but the estimates I've seen on that from EDAR is over $1.5 billion a year. Dota's making about $1 billion a year. You do see Call of Duty's well up there. They're making in that kind of range. But there's other benefit too of not just that's recurring revenue. Meaning people pay that again and again and again. The one real benefit of that, and maybe this is arguable, but I'll try it out there. Maybe folks in the stream can agree or not. One benefit I like about recurring revenue or online games is that theoretically it ought to be really Darwinian. It ought to be really or meritocracy, where if you put pretty graphics on a box and you sell, a pretty box, and people get it home and they're like, that looks cool. They bring it home and they play it and it sucks, but you spent $50 for it. The developer really isn't incented to care very much. They're kind of stoked they don't have any support costs now, and they made their $50, which is most what they're going to make. If you have an online game, though, you got to play again and again and again for them to make any money. And so theoretically, only good games really ought to be ones that make money. And it's nice if dollars incent you to make good games, presumably we'll see more good games. But I've argued that for a lot of years, but there's a lot of pretty damn formulaic games making money on mobile or otherwise, where I don't know those games would really qualify as great or innovative necessarily because a lot of them are following the same mold down to the same icons. And yet they're making tons and tons. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars a year. In part, the data that I've seen on that is that it is better in the mobile space by a fairly large factor to invest a lot of marketing in a bad game than it is to have a good game with little marketing. With quality of game being measured by a Metacritic rating or a store rating, which you can argue should tie to quality. Dollars being measured by marketing dollars being measured by what public information is on there. And so, if so, that kind of sucks. I think for the industry, like it would be better off if good games tended to the way to make money being good games, not like having advertisements with bosoms on them. Everywhere you look online or on TV or whatever. I think it's a win for the industry. The more that quality wins, but it's torn right now. PC it's more balanced, and console it's more balanced. It's slightly better to actually market a bad game than it is to undermarket a good game. And obviously, best of all worlds is when you have a lot of marketing behind a good game, which does miraculously happen occasionally.
While on the same topic, on certain games, I can't think of one at the moment, but games where players are able to purchase in-game content, like additional goods and stuff that are better than normal goods. Do you think that gives an unfair advantage over the average?
Well, so the number one example of that's probably the airdrop stuff that there's been a lot of talk about recently. You get dropped in weapons. You do kind of have to fight for them. You might luck out and someone else buys them, but you snag them or vice versa. I don't know. It's kind of been a bit of a third rail, but it's funny because it pisses people off, but people buy it. And so as a game maker, do you hold to no, I don't like games like that, I don't want to make them, or do you do the thing that makes more money? And it's tough because, you're in business to make money, but you're also in business because you're in this business because you love them. You know what I mean? That's what you got in here. I think it's a rare bird who comes in here because they think this is a hot way to make money. So they're probably rapidly disabused of that by crunching for 5 or 6 years and not, for instance, making any extra money on that, or then having your game flop. And so, boy, I'm torn on that. I've been talking about that with some developers recently too, because there's some folks are like, there's a friend of mine making a mobile game right now, and he's like, man, there's just there's a way to monetize it that just feels, it's not being very successful in beta based on the way that it's, and part of that's because the monetization isn't very compelling. But he didn't want to make a game that had super compelling, like you feel like you have to plug it in. But then he's going to launch it, and it's not going to get popular because it doesn't go up the top grossing charts, which is where people look to see, which games are good or not. And so, what a weird catch-22 that is about. You want your game to make more money so it become more popular so people even play the damn thing. And he's torn on it. He really is torn on it because he doesn't like the kind of games that you turn around every 5 seconds and there's some timer you want to go down and so you plug in another 50 cents to speed it up. But he feels himself getting drawn into that as a small developer. So, it's a really good question. There is not a perfect answer on that. If you have the luxury of doing things as a passion project, then screw it, just make the kind of game you want. If you don't have that luxury, then it's very hard to, avoiding being evil in this industry can be a little tricky because it's, there's, you want to draw on the right things about gameplay being what lures people in, not about a clever monetization scheme, in my opinion.
Abby asks, do you think game music can break a game? depending on how it's, if the music is good or bad.
God, yes and no. I mean, the easy answer in that is I think it can make it. And by that I mean the man, you hit it like a good soundtrack and it's killer. Or some of the moments that are most powerful in gaming to me have been done by the music, like the for everything from like the song at the end of Portal to like you go into Mexico for the first time in Red Dead Redemption, and that song comes up, and you're going through the wasteland, and it's like and it just sucks you in. Like that's pretty tremendous stuff, and so it can certainly make it. I don't think you can break it because if you have a bad soundtrack, you turn the damn thing off. And so so I think that bad music is a good music can really sell your game, but bad music won't necessarily kill it. And we're also in an era too where it's pretty easy to like stream whatever stuff you want in the background so that you can have your own soundtrack going. But maybe I'm biased. There's audio guys who would kick the crap out of me for saying that they think it was immortal. They'll make a bad soundtrack. I've worked with some really good folks on audio over time too. The
My friend Ty wants to know your opinion on
On
Gamergate.
Gamergate.
I'm not sure what that
Well, here's
is.
what Gamergate is in like a
Yeah.
super nutshell. And there's probably no way even to describe it without pissing people off. So go figure. The it's a real. I mean, I think the whole thing is a bit of a mess. Uh, there are female game developers who have suffered a lot of harassment basically over the opinions, actions that they're supposed to have done. There's people who are outraged because there's too tight ties sometimes between journalists and game developers, which can absolutely be the case. There are people. There's kind of divided sides in terms of people who would have the back of the female developer who's involved in all that versus who are outraged at the journalism aspects. There are good people passionately arguing on both sides of that, and there are, I would say, assholes passionately arguing on both sides of that. So if you're not familiar with it, I think in some ways it's a fine place to be. It's very tough to really know what's going on with all that. I don't know any of the people involved personally. I'm a big believer in that whatever you hear second, third hand, or through the internet, knowing the actual people involved, they're going to have a real different story than what the hell's leaked on through Twitter and what's leaked on through the social media. And so I try to be as evidence-based guy as possible, and so I kind of withhold judgment on that until if it's relevant to me or if I'm going to work with someone involved with that, then I want to talk to the other end of the story and kind of figure out what the heck's going on over there, because there's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of people very angry about different stuff of that. The Yeah, so I think at best, I think the rational thing to do is kind of a measured approach on it, regardless, because there is an awful lot of she said and other she said stuff that goes on with all that. So, personal opinion.
Disabled Talent Acts are game companies to blame for the hacks and mods available for games as they use them to test their own games.
There's a couple ways that question could be meant, and so are you responsible for hacks and mods available for games? At the end of the day, you have to be somewhat responsible for the kind of stuff. If you provided them, if it's stuff that's in the game or you've forgotten, oops, there's a hack that's available that you intended to remove and you didn't. Yeah, you're at the end of the day. Legally and otherwise, you tend to be pretty damn responsible for that. Hot coffee back in the days of GTA 3 was that?
I think so, yeah.
And so you better be pretty darn sure what the heck's you put in there. In terms of like modding for if you mean modding in the sense of the question is they use them to test their own games. The Testing games is kind of an interesting subject in its own right, because it's very easy in this era of very, very high content games or procedural games. Testing those is actually it's pretty damn hard. How do you test Minecraft? You know what I mean? You could make any damn thing you wanted in there. How do you exhaustively test all configurations of all possible blocks anyone could make? You kind of can't. You can do it in chunks. You can do it and say, like, well, here's the 18 kinds of blocks, and we can make sure they interact with each of the 18 kinds. 18 times 18, I should have done earlier. Easier math. What is that? 40 million combinations? No, it's bigger than that. 400 million combinations, roughly. of block combos now just with 18 blocks against 18 blocks. The the because you need to now test